Well, first of all, it's going to get 46%. You got 46% of the president, it's getting 46% of the congressional vote. But the truth of the matter is, Trump didn't very much run on the economy. He was running on the caravan. He was running a lot on immigration. So there's a good point here, and the Republicans have a lot of power, and they've had consecutive years where consecutive elections where they've gotten 46%. So it's an interesting point, and it'll carry forward. But I think the real question my phone is ringing tonight, and people are saying, what does this mean for 2020? And the wonderful thing about political people is when one election is over, they start looking toward the next one. And I think that's going to be an interesting question that people are going to be asking. It's kind of weird that we're sitting here with all these undecided races, and my phone is saying, well, what does this mean for 2020? And I'm not real sure, but I'll be thinking about it a lot and talking about it tomorrow, I'm sure.
Well, I'd love you to answer that question because of this mixed result tonight, who is the star that emerges? You know, people, when the sun comes up tomorrow, we're going to be arguing Beto O'Rourke, like it or not, uphill battle or not, he lost a Senate race tonight.
Oh, right. Well, it was amazing, but you know, you want to win. And the problem is the way that the House is, it's very difficult to win. But I think a big issue for Democrats is going to be winnability. I think if you went to a Democrat and says, I got a candidate you agree with 90% of the time and has a 52% chance to win, or a candidate you agree with 80% of the time that has a 53, a lot of them will say, give me the person with 53. I'm sick of losing elections. And I think that's going to come up to the forefront of when Democrats make their selection in 2020 as to who they pick, because I don't think they're going to be interested in picking the purest person, but I think they're going to be interested in picking a Democrat that can articulate the party's principles and have a chance to win the presidency in 2020. I think that's going to be a big issue in my political party.
James, do you think the guy who votes or the woman who votes in Iowa in the caucuses or in New Hampshire or South Carolina or Nevada or California, do they know what a winner in November looks like?
You know, you'd be surprised. People know what talent is. People knew what Bill Clinton looked like. To some extent, they learned what Barack Obama looked like. And if you can move an audience, what Beto Cruz did. I mean, skill matters in this business. I think Beto showed that. He had enormous skill. He carried, by the way, two House seats with him. I mean, that Dallas seat and that Houston seat is you know, very much owed to Beto O'Rourke and what he accomplished. So I do think it does, but I think people are looking for somebody talented, somebody that can articulate what the party stands for, and that can go out and take the message, and not just in Democratic areas, but cut some of the margins. When I looked at some of these results, in these red counties in Georgia, Florida, places like that, I mean, they were huge. The margins were huge. And we've got to be able to cut into these margins in places like that, in these red counties, if we're going to, you know, really win elections. And I think Sarge is right. 9 points, you know, I don't know where it ends up, but that's about where the polling was. There's going to be a lot of talk about polling this and polling that. I think the public average was about 8.5. So it wasn't a terrible night for polling. I expected maybe worse because of the increased turnout, but the pollsters had a pretty good night tonight.
So you're not worried about the party following its passions rather than its brains. I'm thinking that Bill Clinton got a great break when Harkin ran in Iowa. He didn't have to run in those caucuses. So he go right into winning in New Hampshire. Well, he came in 8 points behind, but he basically won a moral victory up in New Hampshire. He could run on winnability.
Yeah, I think those Iowa caucuses, I think the Iowa Democrats, they you know, I think they thought they were going to win the governorship. That was a tough loss. And you know, they're astute people, and I mean, they have passions that may be more liberal in the country as a whole, and maybe even more liberal than Iowa, but they're going to be interested in winning as much as anything else. Now, you're going to have to be a Democrat, and you obviously got to believe that climate change is real, or you know, that Social Security and Medicare Foundation retirement in the United States, health insurance can be expanded. But beyond that, I think that they and New Hampshire will for sure. I think they're going to be looking at somebody who can take it not just to the Republicans, but can take it to the American people and articulate what they really think and what the party stands for. And I think it's going to be a big issue.
Be great.
James Carville, thank you, sir, for being with us tonight. It sure is
well, thank you all for having me.
Great to be able to toss questions to you about the Democratic Party going forward. I am told there is some news out of the state of Florida, Steve Kornacki, as it can't be that it's further tightened.
Well, let's show you the bottom line here in the race for U.S. Senate. So you see Rick Scott continuing to lead here, the margin about 56,000 votes, but also the margin when you just look at the decimal points here, 50.3, 49.7, 0.6, 6/10 of 1 point. And remember, I think we said this earlier, but to remind everybody, one of the reasons you do not see a check mark next to Rick Scott's name is there are still potentially some outstanding precincts here. Even a slight, and I mean very slight, like 1/10 of a point improvement for Nelson in that margin would bring that down to 0.5 of a point, 0.5%, and that would trigger an automatic recount. If you're at 0.5% or less, automatic recount. So Nelson on the cusp of that. As you can see, not all of the precincts still in. They are still scattered. We're still trying to make sense of that completely. So it's still the possibility there that this could fall within 0.5% and go to a recount. Hence, there is no call.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. We're going to delve into an update on the Georgia governor's race on the other side of this break. Our live coverage continues. We are back 1:21 Eastern Time, and trust me when I say that 30 Rock during election night in the red, white, and blue up the side of the building is so iconic. It's visible throughout New York City, and it is a beautiful sight to behold in person. But that is the race that has our attention right now. We promised you an update on the Georgia governor's race. Please note the wording in the yellow box, too early to call. You know what time polls close tonight in Georgia. We are lucky to have Katie Turk covering this race. She is in Atlanta for us. Katie, what do you have?
I'm at Abrams headquarters, Brian. Remember earlier tonight, which feels like a lifetime ago, when that poll worker told us it was wild today? Well, it is still wild right now. Notably, it is almost 1 a.m. or it's past 1 a.m. and neither campaign is declaring victory and neither campaign is conceding at this hour. Stacey Abrams is going to take the stage here regardless, and in about 10 minutes, she's expected to update the supporters here to tell them that she's not going to make an announcement tonight. What they're looking at right now is still some open votes in DeKalb County. They haven't counted all of those yet, but they're also focusing on absentee ballots and provisional ballots. There are some counties that say that those will be counted in a couple hours tonight. Others say they won't be counted until tomorrow morning. 20,000 absentee ballots in Gwinnett County, 25 to 26,000 in Cobb County, and that doesn't even count the thousands of provisional ballots. Again, guys, this race is too tight to call right now. It could go one way or the other. It's all going to come down to race and turnout. Who has a bigger, obviously, turnout than the other? But it might not be clear until tomorrow morning. And again, there could be a runoff. And if there is a runoff, if neither candidate gets 50 plus 1, then we're not going to see a result here in this state until December 4th. So hang tight. Georgia is still in everyone's mind. Will be tomorrow morning as well. And that's all the jokes I have for this evening.
I mean, watching Katie report on that, watching Steve Kornacki report on that. I've been watching the Atlanta Journal-Constitution update their politics blog on this all night, talking about planning on counting the absentee votes in Gwinnett in the morning and all of this stuff. It's just, who knows when we're going to get the final result there. It's turned out to be interesting for all sorts of ways we did not expect. I want to give you guys an update on some things that we've been watching in terms of ballot races. We talked earlier, just before we got the first results out of Florida, that the Amendment 4 in Florida passed. And what that means is that more than 1 million people who've been disenfranchised in Florida because of felony convictions, they will have their voting rights restored. That's a huge deal in Florida. We also saw 2 states raise.
Is it weird that that passed and the races are so tight?
I mean, I think that Democrats were pursuing that because they like it as a policy, but they also thought it would be a good turnout, a good vector for turnout. So, I mean, maybe it got those races closer than they otherwise would have been.
A lot of Republicans voted for it, you could tell.
Yeah, right.
A lot of Republicans
thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
They must have.
In Arkansas and Missouri, both of those states have decided to raise their minimum wage. Arkansas increases the minimum wage to $11 an hour, phased in through 2021. Missouri raises the minimum wage to $12 an hour, phased in over 5 years. That Missouri minimum wage is a rerun of what was on the ballot the first time Claire McCaskill got elected to the Senate. And a lot of people think that the minimum wage extra turnout helped Claire McCaskill across the finish line the first time she ran. Obviously, not enough to help her tonight, but Missourians who are working for minimum wage will get a raise. There's also a bunch of redistricting matters on the ballot, and I think we've got a board for these. In Colorado and in Michigan and in Utah, they were all voting on whether or not basically the state should be ungerrymandered. Colorado, Michigan, and Utah are states where we've been watching this tonight. It looks like in all of these, it has either passed or it is leading. And so we've been talking about the sort of structural advantage that Republicans have in terms of gerrymandered congressional districts. Well, in Colorado, in Michigan, and it may be ultimately even in Utah, that redistricting will now be done in a nonpartisan way. It's to ungerrymander, untilt the playing field.
Imagine that. How are we going to survive?
Good government, I know, in real life. One last one to tell you about, which is about Medicaid expansion. We've been talking all evening about the fact that the single most important issue for voters tonight was health care. Medicaid expansion means thousands, tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands more people have health insurance in specific states than they wouldn't otherwise have it. Tonight, Medicaid expansion has been on the ballot in Idaho and in Nebraska and in Utah. In all three of those red states, Medicaid expansion is leading. So Americans may be willing to vote for Republicans who are against Medicaid expansion, but when they get to vote on Medicaid expansion directly, they vote for it, even in the reddest states in the country.
Let's go out to a big red place, way up north, the state of Montana. Steve Kornacki has that concerned look on his face. Jon Tester may be a lot of unique things in the U.S. Senate. He's certainly the only flat top. He may be the only senator without a complete set of digits, and he may be the only working farmer in the Senate. But is he going to return to the U.S. Senate, Steve?
He is also very endangered at this minute. We were looking at some of those early returns there in Montana, looking at some of those key counties and saying Tester was looking good relative to how he fared in 2012. I'm saying those sort of rural areas there that went hard for Trump surged even harder, I should say, towards Trump. Tester not reaching his 2012 levels there, and you can see now he's fallen 3,000 votes behind statewide. That said, there are some places left here. Glacier, no votes out of there yet. So that will be, we assume, a Democratic area where Tester can get vote. Roosevelt, there's a Native American reservation there, typically very Democratic in terms of the voting there. We are still waiting. Bozeman is right here. Still got a lot of vote to come from there. So some big sort of, also Blaine right here. This should be Democratic. So these are 4 counties where the expectation is, and you can see it's 3,600 votes. The expectation is Tester is going to be able to make up a lot of that, but still the vote coming in, especially from those rural areas, so heavily for Rosendale coming from different places. Tester's in trouble here right now. And the other one, quickly, just to update you, because we've been saying all night what's going on in the Wisconsin governor's race. Tony Evers leads this thing by 1,811 votes right now. Why has it gotten closer? We said wait till Brown County, Green Bay finally reports all of its votes. It has. It brought Walker that much closer. There's still a scattering. This is as of about 5 minutes ago. It may be dated. I added up the outstanding precincts that are left, and there were 89 outstanding precincts in counties where Walker is now leading, and there were 62 outstanding precincts in counties where Evers is now leading. Now, you don't know which individual precinct that is. Maybe it's a Republican precinct in a Democratic county, but just give you a sense of the distribution of that vote. And, of course, the big wild card we're waiting for in all of this, we were told, and we're waiting to see about what happens here, 45,000 uncounted absentee ballots from Milwaukee County due to be counted, we were told, sometime around now, sometime this hour, waiting for more clarification on that. Right now, 2,000 vote lead for Evers. Walker would need to make up a lot of it in those outlying precincts I was talking about if what we're hearing from Milwaukee is what it sounds like. And
in terms of those Milwaukee votes, that sounds like a lot of votes, Steve. If there are, in fact, that many votes in Milwaukee remain to be counted, and now's around the time they're going to start, how long would it take to count those?
Yeah, and that's why I said we were told within, and this is sort of a vague guidance we're getting here. I am imagining a scene of some confusion and chaos, but we were told an hour. They would begin counting and get through them pretty quickly.
Wow.
But again, that might be a very general guidance. I remember being here in March for a special election in Pennsylvania and being told, hey, yeah, we're going to count those by 11:30, and at 5:15 in the morning, I was still waiting.
Oh, promises, Steve Kornacki.
I'll have what he's having. Another quick break for us. We're back with more returns just on the other side. We are back in New York, and let's put up on the side of the building one of the races we are following, Scott Walker versus Tony Evers. Look at that, a difference of 1,800 voters. That makes us think of Charlie Sykes. And Charlie, I know we're talking about your home state. What is taking so long out there?
Well, it is an extraordinary finish. In the next few minutes, we should be finding out what the results are from 47,000 votes from the city of Milwaukee. And they just had so many of these early votes, these mail-in votes, that they're not able to process them. So right now, within the last 3 or 4 minutes, the city election commissioner walked the flash drive, up to up below them, and we're going to find out what happens. A rough estimate is this could add 15,000 votes, net votes, to Tony Evers' margin. So this race has been so close all night, and within the next few minutes, I think we're going to get pretty dramatic development.
Charlie, how do you think how do you assess the Walker camp's confidence at this point? Obviously, if anybody knows how to run for governor in Wisconsin, it's Scott Walker at this point, including his campaign team. Do they think they're going to win?
Well, I would say this, that throughout the night they thought they might have a path to victory, and then, of course, this bombshell was dropped about the 47,000 votes in heavily Democratic city of Milwaukee. So I'm not sure how confident they are because, earlier in the night, there was a lot of talk about an automatic recount, but I don't know how you make up 10, 15, 20,000 votes in a recount. So we're just going to wait for that bomb to drop. It's going to be a rather dramatic end to what's been a back-and-forth race all night.
In terms of the counting time that we're anticipating, you were describing what's happening in terms of getting those flash drives and having those voters, those ballots loaded up and downloaded. Do you expect this to be a snappy process at this point, to happen quickly?
Yeah, I think we're going to find out in the next few minutes. Wow. Really, it's going to be, almost any moment now. So it's just a matter of time. Local news is actually tracking the election officials walking the flash drive into the office where they're going to upload it to the Milwaukee County database.
Wow. I love this part.
Yeah, maybe too much excitement than they banked on, especially coming off terrible loss for the Packers. Sorry about that, Charlie. Well, it was still sad. Angus King in the great state of Maine, the independent who caucuses with the Democrats, is going back to the Senate. Nicole, Maine is an interesting situation. You've got King and you've got a senator who went through the ringer on Kavanaugh. Susan Collins really, it was an interesting journey for fans of Susan Collins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we haven't talked about Kavanaugh that much tonight, the Kavanaugh effect. I mean, I think that
it was a big deal where people were casting their votes, I think.
Yeah, and I think we also have, here we have Stacey Abrams.
Oh, we have Stacey Abrams in Atlanta.
Thank you so much. Love you too. When you chose me as your Democratic nominee, I made you a vow. In our Georgia, no one would be unseen, no one is unheard, and no one is uninspired. But we know a vow takes effort. It takes commitment to hold truth. Reaching out, reaching across is hard work. But as I told you then, hard work is in our bones. And we have proven this every single day, Georgia, with doors knocked, with calls made, with miles traveled, with prayers prayed to the highest heavens. And tonight we have closed the gap between yesterday and tomorrow. But we still have a few more miles to go. But hear me clearly, that too is an opportunity to show the world who we are. Because in Georgia, civil rights has always been an act of will and a battle for our souls. And because we have been fighting this fight since our beginnings, we have learned a fundamental truth. Democracy only works when we work for it, when we fight for it, when we demand it. And apparently today, when we stand in lines for hours to meet it at the ballot box, that's when democracy works. But I'm here tonight to tell you, votes remain to be counted. There are voices that were waiting to be heard. Across our state, folks are opening up the dreams of voters in absentee ballots, and we believe our chance for a stronger Georgia is just within reach. But we cannot seize it until all voices are heard. And I promise you tonight, we're going to make sure that every vote is counted. Every single vote. Every vote's getting counted. Because I'll tell you this, in a civilized nation, the machinery of democracy should work for everyone everywhere, not just in certain places and not just on a certain day. But what lies on the other side of our efforts? Our best lives are within reach. Fully funded public education in the state of Georgia. Medicaid expansion. And raising family incomes without raising taxes. Every Georgian that we have touched along the way understands the power of the vote. And I will tell you, this election has tested our faith. I'm not going to name names, but some have worked hard to take our voices away, to scare us away, to distract us. But our vision is clear and we see the finish line. You have inspired me every single day of this campaign. I know what you sacrificed to make your way to the polls, to volunteer after work or on lunch breaks. And I know that you've put your faith in me, and you'll do it again. Georgia, you put your faith in me, but I want you to know tonight, the feeling is mutual. And I want you to look around. Tonight should be all the proof you need that when we put our faith in the great people of the state, there is nothing we can't accomplish together. This fundamental truth is why we fight on, because Georgia still has a decision to make. A decision between division and trickery, or a leadership that defends your rights, your kids, your career, your community, and your right to vote in America. That's what's on the ballot. Now, to all of Georgia's voters, including the 1.2 million who haven't shown up before, welcome aboard. But I want to say this. If I wasn't your first choice, or if you made no choice at all, you're going to have a chance to do a do-over. And I need you to know that it is my mission to serve you, to serve Georgia, to make you proud. And for those who didn't pick me the first time, to change your mind about me and what we can accomplish together. You see, I learned a long time we don't need to agree on everything. But I will always respect you, and I will do everything I can to keep you safe and help you live your best lives. Because that's what leadership requires at this moment. And it is how we breathe life back into our republic when it seems to be shallow of breath. And to everyone who has already poured your precious time and energy and hard-earned dollars and your love into this campaign, I say thank you. And I urge you to stay with us. Because Georgia, Friends, we are still on the verge of history, and the best is yet to come. Because this is not about me. It's about us. It's about our voices. Say our voices. It's about our votes. Say our votes. It's about our time. Say our time. Our voices. Our votes. Our time. Because we are Georgia. Say it with me. We are Georgia. We are Georgia. Say it with me. Say we are Georgia. We are Georgia. We are Georgia. So let's get it done. Thank you so much.
Neither a victory nor a concession speech, but
Definitely
rousing.
not a concession speech.
It was rousing.
Stacey Abrams is a damn good candidate. And what's going to happen in Georgia at this point seems, I mean, the numbers say what they say. You got to clear 50% in order to avoid a runoff. We've got votes yet to be counted. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution is talking about votes from Gwinnett County by the thousands needing to be counted. I mean, that speech from her was nothing near a concession.
Yep, that was
very,
not a
very
concession.
pointed attack on efforts to deprive people of the right to vote. I mean, she didn't mince words. She hasn't all along. There was a last-minute attempt by her opponent to smear her and accuse her or her allies, the Democrats in the state, of hacking the election. But
because other people alerted his office to the fact that there were problems in the voter registration
that he's
system
in charge of.
That he's in charge of, and so he decided by saying
it was transfer that to her.
Yeah.
From when she was talking about a do-over, I assume she's talking about a runoff.
Yeah.
I mean, getting to a runoff and indicating that she seems to think there are enough of her votes out there that could send it to a runoff.
Put him
which
under
is a possibility.
50%. Yeah, absolutely.
We just saw a graphic from Montana where there is some news. Number one, Montana, while a large place, and the president remarked recently at how big the sky is, has one congressional district. Congressman Gianforte is going back to Congress, but here is the race that we have been concentrating on. John Tester, Steve Kornacki. Mr. Tester just got a little more air in his lungs.
Yeah, this has been the most fascinating one to watch, right up there with Wisconsin. I'm not sure which one is more suspenseful. So just before you came over to me, Tester cut Rosendale's lead in half. He cut it in half because finally we got vote in Glacier County. Now about half of it in there, and you can see this is why I was circling it earlier. We expected a giant Tester win here. Still about half to come, so Tester can get more margin out of Glacier County to cut into that Rosendale statewide lead, which stands there at about 1,800 votes right now. Also, if you look down in Bozeman, still the Bozeman area, Tester expected to get more vote out of there. Great Falls area, Tester expected to get more vote out of there. We said Roosevelt County Indian Reservation, expecting Tester to get more vote out of there. Blaine as well. Those are the places left on the map where Tester can still make up gains. If you just put all those together, that would certainly put him ahead of Rosendale. But then, of course, the question is, right here in particular, try to get that to work. Oh, my goodness, it won't work. Come on. Maybe if I do it 20 more times, it'll work. No, it's not going to work. So there's two more counties here. There's two more counties here that we expect Rosendale to win by significant margins, and a couple rural ones, too, where he's maybe going to get a margin of a couple hundred votes. So, wow. I mean, we'll know when they're all in. But Tester, he's down 1,800 right now. He certainly has places on this map where he can win this race.
Hey, Steve, going back to your original board tonight, you were talking about the targeted races. It looks like the periodic table of elements. We were waiting for a long column of California congressional districts to come in. Can you show us how that board has shaped up over the course of tonight?
Yeah, and this is how the board shaped up. It's frozen in place. So as I try to press house, it wants us. It's like that Ouija board. It wants us to see Montana. So no,
even without the board, can I ask you about Nevada? Is there anything we can do with the frozen board?
Absolutely. We took hours after poll closing in Nevada to start to get the results. The initial results that come in Nevada, they're the early vote, the mail-in vote, and Washoe County, okay, Reno, second largest county in the state. This is what saved Dean Heller when he was initially elected in 2012. He initially was elected in 2012 by 1 point statewide because he won double digits in Washoe County. That early mail-in vote is now reported in a double-digit lead for Jackie Rosen, the Democrat. So you've got that, and apparently there is no, I try to show you, no vote out of the Las Vegas area yet, though obviously expected to go Rosen's way down there. So that is probably a good early sign for the Democrats in Nevada. That state would be a pickup for them on the Senate side if Rosen pulls it off.
Wow. And Steve, are we allowed to ask you right now about Arizona Senate or no?
Yeah, the last guy, I'm going to take one Hail Mary pass, and it falls incomplete in the end zone. Well, in Arizona, what we had a few minutes ago, the last time I checked in, was McSally had opened up a lead statewide of about 3,500 votes. And the story really seemed to be about Maricopa County. There's still quite a bit of vote to come there. Again, it's almost 2/3 of all the vote that's going to come in statewide. Where exactly in Maricopa that the outstanding vote is from, I'm not sure. But if that is more McSally or more Cinema, I think that's going to make the difference out there.
All right. Hey, I have a question for Chris Matthews. Earlier tonight, you were talking about the Democrats may be stitching a new area of the country together, and you were talking about how it comes through your home state of Pennsylvania. Explain.
Well, the country's becoming, in our lifetimes, much more balkanized. I mean, you bunch. If you look at these red states, they behave a different way than people in the East, what the West Coast behaves. And people become more like the people around them. People are other-directed. We always like this sort of conceit we're all inner-directed. We're not. We're social beings. And we live in this Washington, where I'm usually at in Washington or New York. You're very comfortable because people around you talk like you, have the same values, they're pro-choice, whatever. They're somewhat secular. And then you go down to another part of the country, and everybody goes to church, and they have a different culture. And I just think the country is getting more and more like that. And I think I look at the suburbs of Philly, which I grew up in and around that area. They're all pretty much going back to where they used to be, voting Democrat. It's a big swing. But I think that we're going to have a harder time because we're not going to have people within our little culture we can negotiate with. You have to cross the boundaries to go find somebody to negotiate with. You got to get somebody from Utah to talk to somebody from Philly.
That's harder.
It gets harder because we don't speak the same language. So I think it's going to problem. Fewer moderates in both parties, of course. Very few moderates left anymore. And so I think it's going to be balkanized and difficult for leaders, but still great leaders can come along. I think Pelosi's one of them. I think she has the backroom skills. Not just to raise money, but to sit around a table with people like Trump and say, all right, Buster, you want to get this monkey off your back called pre-existing conditions? You want this monkey off your back? We can talk. But I also want to get this immigration thing off our backs. So how about a comprehensive bill? I'm tired of listening to this stuff. So let's fix some things. Talking turkey might work. It might work.
You know, one thing I wonder about this election, I wonder if a few years from now we won't look back and see this as an election where the Democratic Party competed seriously in places where it was not before competitive. It competed seriously in Texas, competed seriously in Georgia. A Democrat is apparently about to win the first district of South Carolina along the coast, Mark Sanford's district, solid Republican district.
A Democrat came like darn close in that South Dakota governor's race, which I was so interested in,
and, you know, there was time years ago when we were surprised to see Republicans competing in a place like Michigan, for example. You know, a Republican presidential candidate wins Michigan. That's that, you know, Union State. That seemed weird, and it seemed like the party was ascended in places where we didn't expect. You know, Beto O'Rourke didn't get over the hump. Stacey Abrams may get to a runoff, may not, but I think those races are going to look really different in retrospect, and they're going to look like the start of something rather than the end of something.
Nicole, what do you think we witnessed tonight?
You know, I think that we saw sort of the first step toward really taking on Trumpism. I think Trump wasn't on the ballot, but he made Trumpism the centerpiece of this election. And I think we also saw the Democrats not blinking. I mean, they settled on health care and articulating a message about something that affects everyone. And Republicans tried to get there by lying about their positions, by and large. So I think we saw the Democrats take some solid steps toward righting the ship that you know, kind of tipped over and got washed over and swamped and depressed 2 years ago. But I think that to the degree that Democrats think they have to choose between holding this White House to account, investigating the corruption, and following through on their legislative agenda would be a mistake. The Democrats have to prove that they can govern and they can hold this White House to account.
We've been into Wednesday for several hours here. Let's go where it's still Election Day in Los Angeles, California. Lawrence O'Donnell, how about, would you like the last word for this hour?
Well, just to pick up on the discussion of what the Democrats will be able to do with the House of Representatives, the number one thing they will be able to do is stop the madness. They will not be in a position to legislate. There's no conceivable immigration deal that Nancy Pelosi could come to an agreement with Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. Does anyone want to write the speech where Donald Trump, after an immigration deal with Nancy Pelosi, goes out to a rally and tries to rally his followers about what a great thing they did for the Dreamers? That's impossible. It can't happen. For most legislators, the no vote that they cast is as important as the yes vote that they cast. The press likes to call it gridlock, but stopping bad things from happening legislatively is a very important function. That's what the House is going to do now.
Lawrence, thank you. Steve Kornacki is going to get permanent back trouble for the hunching over that computer he's done tonight. Steve,
the board update, no update on the board. It's still frozen. There are reports we are trying to track down about those absentee votes in Milwaukee County. Remember, it's Wisconsin pretty much coming down to that. The last time we were checking there, it was a very, very slight lead for Tony Evers. There are reports out there that those ballots have been counted, tabulated, and that they're being reported by others as a massive, massive victory for Evers. We're trying to confirm that as soon as I can. I will.
All right.
Charlie Sykes told us that was going to happen. I've been following politics for 60 years, personally, following election results, and I have never seen anything like Steve Kornacki. I have never. The virtuosity.
I'm not going to get any objection
here. The ability of him to keep all these things. It's like the $64,000 question. The guy has 50 aspects to every question.
The best thing is when you can see him thinking it out. When he goes to see how a race is going, and then he immediately pops it out to the counties and starts doing the math in the counties before you've even asked him the question about it.
And he tells you what happened last time and what's going to happen next time.
Anyone who tries to say he is nothing without his technology has been proven wrong tonight. He's got no technology. He's just Steve Kornacki. He's brilliant in any form.
I'm never right about the things that come next. So don't.
Our hats off to you, pal, and thank you for the huge role you played. Thanks, everybody, for the role. We've been at this for a long time.
Democrats took the House. We do not know their ultimate margin. Looks like they're closing in on a 30-seat gain, which would put this as a historic night for the Democrats.
35.
35. Come on.
35.
They may get up to 35. We'll see how things go, but it's been huge.
Live coverage continues right after this. First polls have closed moments ago. I just got the eye from Steve Kornacki across the room at the board. What do you have?
Some things are going to start happening fast here.
We do have our first flip of the night.
There are 25 total Clinton-held Republican seats, and so far Democrats are flipping them.
Sherrod Brown is projected to hold on to his seat in Ohio.
We carry a state that Donald Trump won by almost double digits.
Marsha Blackburn, the United States Senate.
Carlos Curbelo fighting for his political life right now.
We're seeing people come out to vote against Donald Trump.
Over 100 women have been elected to the House.
Mikey Sherrill, she raised millions of dollars. He has been defeated tonight. Haley Stevens, the Democrat. Abigail Spanberger. This is the 23rd pickup now.
Chris Kobach just went down to defeat in Kansas.
Really? Did you just get a call?
NBC News is projecting Ted Cruz will return to the Senate, and Republicans will be guaranteed control of the Senate.
I will be out there fighting with you. you, I am not going away.
How about the 19th district, the Hudson Valley? John Faso, Republican incumbent, losing to Antonio Delgado.
For the Democrats, this is ball game. NBC News is predicting the Democrats will control the House of Representatives.
So this means divided control on Capitol Hill. There will be Democratic chairs of every committee in the House with everything that entails.
This changes Washington. This changes life for the White House staffers. And this changes Donald Trump's life immediately.
It is 2 a.m. here on the East Coast, 11 p.m. for our viewers out west. I'm Willie Geist, and we are wide awake with plenty still to decide on this historic night, with a great new group put together to break down how it happened and what it all means. Thank you for staying up with us as we take you for the next 4 hours live right into Morning Joe. Tonight, we have a shift in the balance of power in the United States Congress. NBC News is projecting Democrats will win control of the House of Representatives, and that comes with all kinds of new checks on President Trump. Let's take a look. Democrats needed a net of 23 seats. Some of those votes still coming in. Our NBC News decision desk projects Democrats could secure as many as 37 in the end, giving them 230 seats. Over here in the Senate, meanwhile, it remains in Republican control. In fact, Republicans actually have gained some seats tonight, including some of the highest profile ones. Let's take a look at some of the results as they've come in tonight. Ted Cruz in that closely watched race defeating Beto O'Rourke. The incumbent Ted Cruz winning there. Mike Braun winning the seat over Donnelly, the incumbent, the Democratic incumbent in the state of Indiana. A pickup there for Republicans. Kevin Kramer taking North Dakota, the Republican there as expected over Heidi Heitkamp, the Democratic incumbent. Marsha Blackburn winning a little bit easier maybe than some people expected over Phil Bredesen, the Democratic former governor of that state. Joe Manchin in a state that President Trump won by more than 40 points, holding on to his seat in the United States Senate there. Josh Hawley, meanwhile, has upended and defeated Claire McCaskill. The incumbent, the Democrat there in the state of Missouri, has lost her race. Right now, some of the races still too close to call, even at this late hour. In the state of Arizona, another of the closely watched races, Republican Martha McSally standing at 49.4 with a small lead there over Kirsten Sinema. In Nevada, the incumbent, Republican Dean Heller, up on Jackie Rosen again, though, with only 23% in. Still too close to call. And in the state of Florida, we're watching a governor's race and a Senate race where the incumbent Bill Nelson still too close to call, but trailing Governor Rick Scott. And in Montana, another tight one, John Tester, the Democratic incumbent, behind for now with 71% of the vote in to Rosendale. Let's go for an update now on some of the governor's races in two battleground states. This is the one a lot of people were watching and talking about. Republican Ron DeSantis has won in the state of Florida, defeating Andrew Gillum, viewed by many as a rising star in the Democratic Party. Andrew Gillum conceding a short time ago. And in the state of Georgia, Brian Kemp, the Republican Attorney General in that state, still too close to call, we're calling it, leading Stacey Abrams. There's still some vote out in several counties around the state, around the city of Atlanta, that could make up the difference. We'll keep a close eye on that. Let's bring in Steve Kornacki. Steve, you and I spoke at this board at 6 o'clock this morning on Morning Joe. I'm not sure you've left your post since then. How are you holding up, first and foremost?
I saw you walk in. I said, holy cow, it's 2 a.m. I thought it was like 10:30 still.
You've been here for almost a full 24 hours.
It's a new day, yeah.
What are you looking at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Well, this is the thing. On an election night like this, the suspense has never been more intense. Look at this. Wisconsin governor's race right now. Tony Evers, the Democrat, his lead, while you were going through that introduction right there, his lead actually climbed now by about 5,800 votes over Scott Walker. But the big piece of suspense here has everything to do with Milwaukee County. Obviously a core Democratic area. We had that report, and we confirmed this much, that officials there said they had 45,000 uncounted absentee ballots that they were going to tabulate, get out to us ASAP. Obviously, the expectation is that they would favor Evers pretty overwhelmingly. There are reports out there that they've been reported that Evers did win them big. We haven't confirmed that, so we're trying to track that down. But if that's true, if anything like that is true, that would be a gain here for Evers of a plurality of something like like, 15,000 votes, and obviously already leading. That would put him in a terrific position. So that's the biggest outstanding story on the governor's side. Also, there is Georgia, where you heard Stacey Abrams a little while ago not conceding. If Kemp's total does somehow fall under 50%, it does go to a runoff. Our decision desk is not calling this yet, and there are some outstanding precincts, but we do think, we suspect that is, that Kemp will finish over 50% here when all is said and done.
Still out, Steve, doesn't look like it can make up the difference for Stacey Abrams.
That's right, because the two right now, the precincts that are out there right now, actually, this is a majority black county, and Stacey Abrams doing very well here. It's a very small county, so there are precincts there. There are precincts in Gwinnett County, bigger, not many precincts. Unlikely even those precincts could bring a statewide total down by a point. Of course, there are some provisional absentee, that sort of thing, but even with that, the expectation here, again, from our decision desk, they're not projecting it, but they think Kemp is going to finish over 50%.
And again, Stacey Abrams not yet conceding there. What else are you looking at, Steve?
So, yeah, on the Senate side, we got a couple barn burners right now out west. Let's start in Montana. Look at this one. And I'm getting my own update here because it's changed since the last time I looked at it. John Tester in serious trouble right now, 3,300 votes behind Matt Rosendale. Now, the good news for Tester, if you're polling for him here, here's what you're looking at. Take a look. This is Bozeman, the Bozeman area, still only about half the vote, a little more than half the vote counted. Tester is going to gain some ground there as it's all voted, as it all comes in. I'm looking around Great Falls here, a lot to come in there as well. That'll help Tester. Blaine County, we expect, will help Tester when that comes in small, but, that could be 750, 800 vote plurality. Roosevelt County, big Indian reservation out there, usually, 2-to-1 Democratic, that kind of thing. So you got some sort of core big Democratic areas. I think Glacier might even, we still got vote to come in Glacier. So when you're dealing with a statewide deficit, about 3,300 votes, Tester could overcome it. There are some rural Republican areas, too. But, wow, Tester fighting for his life right now. The other Senate stories very quickly in Arizona. The vote continues to come in now slowly. Martha McSally, though, opening up a 15,000 vote lead. Maricopa County is almost the whole story here. It's like 2/3 of the state population-wise. Sinema leading here, but does she need to open up a bigger lead in Maricopa County to get the lead statewide? That seems to be the story. And finally, in Nevada, where, the lines were so long tonight, it took them hours to actually close the polls and start things off. But this was the biggest piece of news. Actually, I'm going to stop, Willie, because I was just told that Milwaukee County has reported. We just said that. Wow, look at that. Remember what we were looking at a minute ago there? It was a couple thousand votes. Milwaukee County put that uncounted absentee. They just reported it out. Tony Evers, you can see he expands there. Statewide, Tony Evers now leads by 37,000 votes. And I can tell you, there are some outstanding precincts. They don't add up to 37,000 votes.
I was going to ask you, is there enough vote out for Scott Walker, or is he cooked?
No, the question here, then, we have to look into this, that 48.3, 40, we're over. I'm looking for recount provisions here. You're at 1.4% statewide. Right. This is a major development. This was not on anybody's radar until about 2 hours ago. We suddenly heard that. I said, that's got to be wrong. Can you repeat it to me? They told me it's true. And that looks like that is likely to make the difference in this race.
Wow, Scott Walker, who's survived time and time again in the state of Wisconsin, maybe not this time. Steve, hang tight. We'll let you power chug a couple more Diet Cokes.
Thank you.
For now, though, we want to go to the state of Arizona, right, guys? We want to go back to that race there. That's where we find Vaughn Hilliard in an airtight race. Vaughn, what's it looking like on the ground?
Willie, we've got about 15,000 votes separating Martha McSally from Kyrsten Sinema. But when you look at this race, there's still 1 million votes that have yet to be counted. That's about 40% of the electorate. The issue is, over the next 24 hours, we expect the results for about 700,000 of those votes to come out. But we won't know the results of about 300,000 of those ballots until starting closer to Thursday night. So these margins, if they continue to tighten, and it's interesting, it can only make you smile. I've been on the phone for about the last hour with both camps here, and the exact quote from the McSally camp was, "We are very optimistic," and the exact quote from the Sinema camp is, quote, "very confident," because we're going through those numbers, and it's really kind of parsing, what is which side had the advantage in the turnout today versus the early ballots that have yet to be counted from Friday through Monday, and both camps are very confident that they are going to be the ones, but the reality is that it's going to be all likely that it'll be several days until we actually get those final results. Willie?
And we know you'll be standing by for them. Vaughn Hilliard, thanks so much. We'll check back in with you. Now, despite the hour of the night, we somehow have assembled an A-plus crew to roll with us over the next 4 hours. I'm joined by MSNBC political analyst Elise Jordan. Elise is co-host of the Words Matter podcast and a contributor to Time magazine. She's also a veteran of the George W. Bush White House and the State Department. Also, contributing editor for Bustle, Alicia Menendez. Alicia is also a co-host of Amanpour and Company on PBS and the co-creator of Latina to Latina podcast. And in the interest of disclosure, the daughter of one of tonight's winners in the United States Senate. We've also got along for the ride MSNBC political analyst Eddie Glaude Jr. Eddie is a professor at Princeton University and the chairman of the Center for African American Studies there. Across the great expanse of our newsroom, we find author and NBC News political analyst Anand Giridharadas and the associate editor for Commentary Magazine and MSNBC contributor Noah Rothman. Is Noah over there somewhere? I don't even know. And joining us from Washington is the White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, Yamiche El Sindor. Good morning to you all. Is it morning or night? What are we calling this?
I don't know. Is it a disco night or is it early
Let's go
morning?
disco night. Let's go disco night. I like that. So, Elise, let me start with you. We've dug into some of the specifics of the race with Steve Kornacki. Let's pull back to 30,000 feet here. The Democrats just took control of the House for the first time since the vaunted shellacking of 2010 under President Obama. What does it mean for the Congress, but more importantly, what does it mean for the President of the United States?
Well, in terms of the expectations game, Donald Trump can say, oh, well, they didn't quite get a wave. They might have won the House, but look at what we did with the Senate. They didn't win a lot of key governor's races. So he's going to still be able to spin this in the way he cares to, but the fact of the matter is his daily existence is going to become much more fraught now that Democrats are going to really turn up the investigations on the House side and put a lot more scrutiny onto him and his cabinet and all of the dealings of his administration.
Alicia, we can quibble about the definition of what a wave is exactly, but one thing that's for sure is there's now a check. There's no question. There is a check on the President of the United States in a way there hasn't been in the last 2 years. If you have Nancy Pelosi with the Speaker's gavel, if you have Elijah Cummings controlling the Oversight Committee, Adam Schiff controlling the Intel Committee instead of Devin Nunes, Jerry Nadler controlling the Judiciary Committee and said we are going to hold this administration to account. This is an entirely different dynamic for the president.
Absolutely. And at the same time, for Democrats, they know the issue that they won on, and that was health care, that was pre-existing conditions. And so the tightrope that they're going to have to walk is, on one hand, holding the president accountable, and on the other hand, showing a good faith effort to actually deliver on the promises they made to the American people.
So, Eddie, big picture, what do you see now? We've had a chance to absorb some of these. It's 2:13 in the morning. What did we just watch?
I have no idea.
Thanks for being with us, Eddie. You're dismissed.
So one of the things that we do know is that we no longer have single-party rule.
Yep.
We have mixed government. That will entail some of the things we've just talked about, that Donald Trump will be held accountable. There will be investigations. There will be attempts to get his tax returns. There will be all of this stuff that will happen. Democrats have to walk that tightrope. They have to figure out how to deliver. They're going to be called obstructionists. They already have been called obstructionists before they even taken control of the gavel. But they're going to have to figure out how to continue to activate their base. Because if they try to be too bipartisan, then they're going to be perceived, as in some ways, by the folks who are so excited and angry, as being weak. And so they have to be very, very careful in that regard. Then pulling back, I have to say that this, although we've seen some really important victories, I'm really, really sad about the state of the country.
Why do you say that?
Given what Trump was saying, all of the ugliness and vitriol, the just racist stuff that was said, when you see 76% of white women voted for Kemp, when you see 59% of white women voted for Cruz, see 51% voted for DeSantis, when you think about Collins, who's an indicted, or we know who's been indicted, he won. When you begin to see McSally and all of these folks, what are we seeing? What are we seeing in the country? We're seeing a deep divide. We're seeing race doing what it has done since our inception.
You can add Duncan Hunter to the list of candidates who won under felony indictment. Yamiche, you cover this White House closely. Let's talk about the reaction out of the White House. Sarah Sanders stepped out into the driveway for just a moment to offer some comment. I think what the president may say is the states he went into, they've done pretty well. He spent a lot of time in Montana. We're waiting to see how that turns out, but it looks like the Democrat John Tester is on the ropes. Missouri, where Claire McCaskill lost. Indiana, where the president went and put his time and energy, Republicans have held on.
Well, that's really the message coming out of the White House. Both Sarah Sanders and Kellyanne Conway came out and talked to reporters at the White House. I spent my whole night at the White House watching election results come in as the president was watching at his watch party. And both Sarah Sanders and Kellyanne Conway said that this the lesson that the president takes away from this midterm election is that when he puts his body in a state and puts his body in a race, that he can help Republicans hold on to seats or win seats. So they feel very good about the Senate. The other thing, though, is that, of course, the White House is already starting to warn Democrats against going and investigating the president too much. Kellyanne Conway held a 28-minute gaggle for reporters, which is longer than some press briefings. And in that, she said that Democrats would be wasting their time if they were trying to go after the president's tax returns or if they were trying to subpoena people. I directly asked Kellyanne Conway if the president regrets having that ad that was deemed too racist to air on CNN, NBC, and other networks. And she said that she hadn't talked to the president about that. But what we know is that the president really doubled down on this idea of fear and immigrants. And the White House is feeling pretty good about that message and where it got and how it got Republicans these seats
and you
in the Senate.
mentioned the president and regrets. I'm reminded of that quote of his a couple of weeks ago where he said, "I have no regrets. It all worked out quite well." I'm sure that's how he's feeling about some of these races tonight. We're going to pick up on this conversation, but first let's go over to the big board with Steve Kornacki. Steve, what are you looking at?
Yeah, Montana, just going to keep you posted because really coming down to the wire here. So you see Tester does draw a little bit closer now. That is a 1,660 vote gap he's facing right there. The reason he drew closer, we said Roosevelt County, we expected to go pretty big for Tester. It's all in now. Tester picking up 605 votes out of the plurality out of there. That is the good news for Tester. The bad news for him is there is still some significant Republican terrain left to come. Beaverhead County, keep an eye on that one. Fergus County just starting to come in. Both of these, you would expect Rosendale to pad his margin, again, which is just under 2,000 votes. And then for Democrats, what is it? What can you get out of Glacier County? What can you get out of Cascade County, where a lot of the votes already in? What can you get, out of the Bozeman area? And then what can you get out of Blaine? I tell you, I said earlier when the first results came in, you'd rather be Tester than Rosendale. I think it might be the other way around now.
Yeah, the president, again, has spent a ton of time in the state of Montana. His son has spent a ton of time in the state of Montana, so they've invested deeply in there. Steve, we'll be back to you in a minute. Let's take a look at the state of Florida, where a lot of Democratic hopes were placed on the candidate there, Andrew Gillum, who was running for governor. There's the Florida Senate race first. Still too close to call, with Governor Rick Scott running against the incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson. We're not ready to call that yet, with 99% of the vote in. Scott with a razor-thin lead. And as I mentioned, Andrew Gillum conceding tonight to Ron DeSantis, the Republican there, who hugged tightly the President of the United States. Ali Vitale is standing by in Naples, Florida for us at Rick Scott's headquarters. Ali, what can you tell us?
Well, we may not have been ready to call that Senate race, but Rick Scott basically did in his speech here tonight. He and his campaign manager said it was a big night for them in Florida, and the Bill Nelson campaign is saying that this is not the turnout that they expected or hoped for, and that they'll give a fuller statement tomorrow. But I think the thing that's so striking for me in covering Florida both in 2016 and then now in 2018 is that there seemed in this election cycle to be two ways to go at this election. You could either do what Ron DeSantis did in the governor's race, and you could run in Trump's image. You could be a Trump acolyte. You could stoke kind of racial fears and racial tensions with a lot of those dog whistles that he was doing throughout the general election. Or you could run like Rick Scott, and you could try to distance yourself from the president. You can try to say that you're your own man and run for the kind of centrist, moderate Republican that elected the kind of governors that we've seen here in the past, like Jeb Bush, for example. And clearly, both of those roads converged back in the same place because both Republicans were elected here tonight, despite the fact that polling had showed both Democratic campaigns ahead consistently, Willie.
All right, Ali, we'll check back in with you shortly. We want to keep it in the state of Florida. Joining us now from Miami is the anchor of NBC Nightly News Saturday and Noticias Telemundo, Jose Diaz-Balart. Jose, great to see you tonight, my friend. What's the reaction in South Florida today about the outcome?
Well, very surprising. A lot of people really felt that maybe Gillum was going to win this election. Also, the Rick Scott and Nelson race is very interesting. We have to remember that Rick Scott has never lost an election in Florida. This was probably one a lot of people thought he may lose. He worked very hard, and I'll be interested in see tonight how the I-4 corridor, where the hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans that have transferred and moved to to the state of Florida since Hurricane Maria, how they voted and what percentage voted. But it's a very interesting, I guess it always comes down to Florida being a razor-thin margin for one or another side. But Willie, I got to tell you, the results of this, when you think that the Latino community, there's 29 million, almost 29 million Latinos eligible to vote this time around. The House of Representatives changing hands, I think that there are going to be a lot of expectations that the House of Representatives, come next year will be doing things like dealing with DACA, at least some immigration reform, even if this doesn't get through the Senate. But there has to be something coming out of the House of Representatives that will deal with very pressing issues that the Latino community is concerned with.
Jose, stay with me 1 second. I want to hop across the room here to Anand Giridharadas. Anand, we're talking about Florida here. We're talking about the Latino vote. We're talking about two high-profile races there. But take a step back for me, as you do so well, and just talk about what you've seen tonight and what it says about the country.
I think tonight was a big night for American liberty, a big night for American decency, a big night for American checks and balances, and a big night for American pluralism. I think it's important to think about what tonight was a referendum on. And I think it was a referendum on racism and on demagogy and on xenophobia, on blood and soil, on sexism, on lies, on the nature of reality, on the abuse of power, on corruption. And I think there are two stories coming out of that referendum. The story number one is, by a somewhat decisive, but in other ways narrow margin, the country rejected those things and rejected President Trump and chose a different direction. But I have to say, resonating with what Eddie talked about earlier, you don't want it to be a squeaker on the questions that I just went through. You don't want a squeaker on racism. You don't want a squeaker on strongman demagogy. You don't want a squeaker on the kind of sexism, institutional sexism we saw litigated in the Kavanaugh hearing. So tonight, I think it's a great set of victories, and there's some historic wins for individual legislators and a lot of these women who ran for office, and a lot of very heartwarming stories. But I think we have to look at the character of our country's soul and the fact that 40 to 45% of us are untroubled by things that would have made our founders, that are making our founders right now turn in their graves.
So, Eddie, we're talking about the soul of America here, to quote John Meacham, who will be with us shortly. But tonight was a little bit about the politics of America, too, which is to say Democrats' job tonight was to go out and put a check on the President of the United States. They hoped they might be able to do it in the Senate. That didn't happen. They were pretty sure they were going to do it in the House, and it did. So didn't Democrats do their job by and large tonight?
To a certain degree, yes. I mean, I think it's important if we want to talk about the politics. The fact that the Democrats have taken over the House, it matters. It is significant. And it's significant in terms of a check on Donald Trump, a check on the Republican Party generally. But I think we have to keep track of this broader set of considerations because the country stands on the knife's edge. And it evidences itself in our politics. But these moments, what Donald Trump did, the closing argument, the kind of argument he made, and that it worked, should disturb us deeply.
If I can offer you and Anand, though, something that might bolster your spirits, there was one group that was very clear, and that was young voters. They maintained their share of the electorate as they have in previous midterms. That's actually really impressive when you consider how high turnout was in this midterm. They broke for Dems 2-1. There was a wild split. 67% of them voted for congressional Democratic candidates. There was a 36-point spread, 3 times what it had been in 2014. So when you look to the future, when you look to the electorate of the future, which is going to be younger and more diverse, they are very clear on where they land in this debate.
And by the way, Elise, we saw some of that reflected in the people who were elected today. We had the first and second Muslim women elected to the United States Congress, the first Native American woman elected to Congress, younger, many more women, and much more diverse than it's been. That chamber will look different come January.
Well, and look at where these races were. The Democrats were met with success. You know, in Virginia, it's a shocker that Dave Bratt was beaten by Abigail Spanberger, former CIA operative, and then you look at other districts in Iowa and then in Minnesota, and you have a lot of the Rust Belt kind of starting to crumble, but it really is these suburban Whole Foods areas. And you aren't seeing the same effect in the broader statewide races necessarily. And so we have a political realignment within this country where suburban voters, country club Republicans, are voting in a different way, and they might be going Dem, but is the Republican Party going to be a party just for the deep red states, or is it going to come, you know, be more encompassing and
I think that was
be
me.
more encompassing?
Siri
and,
picked you up and
Siri's like, Siri actually knows what she's talking about, because I probably wasn't making much sense.
Siri was looking up some of the data.
Is this going to just continue to be more polarization, more political segregation? And that's what we saw a continuation of 2016 play out.
It does feel like some of those divides we saw in 2016 were deepened again tonight and made even more clear. Steve Kornacki's at the board with another update for us. Steve, what are you looking at? Yeah,
that Nevada Senate race kind of late starting because they had those long lines at the poll, but it may be close to finishing right now. This is not called by NBC News, but Jackie Rosen has put herself into a very good position here. Jackie Rosen taking on incumbent Republican Dean Heller here. Why? Two reasons. We talked about this earlier. Washoe County, Reno. This is the area where Dean Heller, he's from not too far, Carson City area to begin with, sort of his natural geographic base. When he was elected in 2012, he won this county very big. It keyed him statewide. He's lost it tonight, and then we just got in. We're getting in now the vote from Clark County, from Las Vegas, from that area, and you can see Jackie Rosen, just population-wise, this is huge. Her margin here is huge. What it's done, she had been trailing in the statewide count. She has now moved comfortably ahead in the statewide count. Not a lot left there. Jackie Rosen, if this holds, would unseat Dean Heller. That would be a Democratic pickup on the Senate side. And just to update you on that Montana race we've been watching, again, some more vote has trickled in. The gap now, it is grown. It is exactly 3,100 votes. Matt Rosendale, the Republican challenger, leading John Tester by. And I'm just clicking to see if we finished up any counties here. Doesn't look like any new counties have completely come in. So the bottom line here, we may be in a situation where the Republicans pick up Montana and the Democrats pick up Nevada. They may end up trading them. We'll keep an eye. Montana, though, still close.
All right, keep us posted on that, Steve. I want to go back to the beginning of the night, because when we talked at 6 a.m. yesterday or today, whenever that was, we talked about the early canaries in the coal mine in Virginia Districts 7 and 10, suburban districts 1 in D.C., 1 in Richmond. Well, we saw what happened in both of those, Spanberger winning, Wexton winning as well. Did that tell you something about how the night was going to go? Yeah, that's
right. One category of race. So these are all the sort of Democratic targets we were looking at to see. This is a mix of the district types here. But we said tonight, as the results started to come in, we were noticing a pattern in a specific type of district. Let's call it up on the screen. These were Republican-held seats that had been won 2 years ago in the presidential race by Hillary Clinton. And here's the complete list of them. And wow, you start seeing more blue than red on this screen. Obviously, the California one's just starting to come in. But look, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We came into the night with 25 of these, and so far 15 of them turned blue. So this is that story. A lot of these end up being these suburban districts, voters who were turned off by Trump in 2016, didn't want anything to do with Trump, even though they had voted Republican in the past. They sent their Republican representative back to Washington. But 2 years later, the message coming out of these types of districts from those same voters seems to be, it's not just Trump. We don't want anybody attached to his party. So that seems to be the heart of the Democratic gains here. They've made inroads elsewhere as well. But I think this this is the most fascinating thing to me to see tonight. Those suburbs, there was that question of those gains Democrats made in the presidential election in 2016. Would they become a longer-term feature of our politics? The fact that they're still here in the midterm in 2018, big deal.
All right, so still out as we roll through the night here, Nevada, that Senate race Steve was just talking about, Arizona, Montana, Florida. We're still looking at whether or not Rick Scott officially will get it done against the incumbent there, Bill Nelson, and also that governor's race in the state of Wisconsin, where Scott Walker is on the ropes. We are just getting started here tonight. We'll dig more into some of the key California House races that are just now wrapping up. You are watching live coverage of election night here on MSNBC. Thank you for sticking with us on this election night. It is 2:34 in the morning here in New York City. We want to welcome some of our NBC affiliates out on the West Coast, where it's 11:34, and we are still tracking some late results out there. I am Willie Geist. We already know Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives. The only question now, by how much? Democrats need a net gain of 23 seats, and as we've been saying, they have surpassed that number. Republicans, meanwhile, will remain in control of the Senate. The margin depends on some races still too close to call, even at this late hour. Let's take a look at some of those races right now. The state of Arizona, Martha McSally and Kyrsten Sinema. Again, a race a lot of people are watching. Immigration right at the center of that debate, and it is too close to call right now. In the state of Nevada, Jackie Rosen, the Democratic challenger, putting it on Dean Heller a little bit right now. Still close to call right now. Rick Scott has a lead on Bill Nelson, the Democratic incumbent. Also too close to call still in the state of Florida. And in Montana, this race that Steve Kornacki has been looking at minute by minute, hitting refresh, where the incumbent John Tester in a Montana brawl for his job with Matt Rosendale, the Republican there. There's the look at the map for governors across the United States at this hour. 20 held by Democrats, 25 by the Republican Party. As you can see, a handful of them still out. Let's bring in Steve Kornacki. Along with him, Dave Wasserman. Dave is the House editor for the Cook Political Report, the two best in the business at the big board for my money. Guys, what are you looking at right now?
And there he is. And Dave, also part of our decision desk. So all these calls we've been making in these House races tonight, Dave's had a hand in. And so perfect person to talk about the biggest batch of outstanding races, California. Let's just go through these quickly. We'll just start, sort of go north to south here. The 10th district, Jeff Denham, Republican incumbent. What do you see here?
Well, we expect Democrats to gain some ground in California as this slow vote count progresses over the course of the next few weeks. Now, this is obviously a very tight margin, but the historical pattern has been for Democrats to add to their percentage as it goes on. No guarantees, but Democrats look likely to pick up a number of seats in California.
Right, so we're talking, it could be a few weeks here before all the votes end up being counted in these. So of these, we got 6 here, 10, 25, 39, 45, 40, 49. Which ones look the most promising right now for Democrats to pick up?
Well, the 10th, the 45th is really the only one, and actually the 39th as well, where Republicans have kind of exceeded our priors. Young Kim, an assemblywoman in California 39, has a lead on Gil Cisneros. That's a seat that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So this would be something of a surprise on an otherwise good night for Democrats. Likewise, California 45, Mimi Walters is the Republican incumbent. This is a classic upscale suburban Republican Clinton district in Orange County. And as you can see, she's got about a 7,000 vote lead. Democrats are really hoping that Katie Porter, who's an Elizabeth Warren protege, can make that up over the course of the late counting. We know this is probably less than half of the total votes that have been cast in this district, so there's a long way to go.
And this was one of those, too, if I remember right, in that top two primary they have in California in June. Walters did lose a lot of ground in the sort of the late count there. Here's one I think a lot of people are wondering about. Dana Rohrabacher. How much trouble is he in right now?
He's in deep trouble. This number looks awfully good for Harley Ruda, the Democrat. Rohrabacher has been chided by Democrats as Putin's favorite congressman. It looks as if Harley Ruda has the edge in this race, given what we know about late counting helping Democrats.
All right. Well, Willie, I said, you said we started this morning. We'll finish up by Pearl Harbor Day on California.
Okay. We'll be here waiting along with you guys. Thanks. We'll see you in just a second. The new look House is defined by a flood of women in districts across the country. More than 24 new women from both parties will be taking their seats in the 116th Congress come January. I want to bring back in my panel now, Eddie Glaude, Alicia Menendez, and Elise Jordan. Elise, this has been, if you'll forgive the cliche at this point, the year of the woman, but it actually was tonight the year of the woman.
Well, I think more on the Dem side, certainly. Yeah. But you look at the women who are winning, and they're a pretty extraordinary class of women. And they've picked good, strong candidates. And then, you go out to California, and there are races where a Republican incumbent like Mimi Walters is having a tough fight. We'll see if she manages to squeeze that one out. But it is a fight with someone from the very progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And so a lot of these fights tonight we've seen play out. It's been Democrats have gotten their grassroots activist choice, but they haven't necessarily fared as well in the actual contest. So this is going to be a good deciding grounds of sorts leading into 2020 as Democrats start to winnow their field of 20 contenders and figure out who can actually win all across the country.
I love you, and I appreciate that you apologize for the cliche before you even said it. But if I never hear Year of the Woman, if I never hear Pink Wave,
I anticipated that.
Thank you so much.
I meant to say many women this year won seats in the House of Representatives.
But it's hard not to. Yes, that is much better. And I think we're now at the point where we need to start normalizing women leaders. Women run for office. Women run. They lead. And once we start talking about them like we talk about everybody else, it will become increasingly more common. I also want to say it's just important that people were out there and that they ran. Even the women who lost, when you see women running, it becomes real to other women that they too can be candidates.
Yeah, and we're looking at some of the historic candidates here. Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, District 5 of that state, the first Muslim woman ever to serve in the United States Congress. Leanne Caldwell is an NBC News Capitol Hill reporter. She joins us now from Washington. Leanne, good to see you tonight or this morning. We haven't decided what we're calling it yet. It's one or the other.
Hard to tell.
What's the reaction on Capitol Hill right now? Nancy Pelosi getting the gavel back. Obviously, Democrats will be chairing all the major committees and have said already tonight that they are prepared now to hold the Trump administration accountable in a way it has not been over the last 2 years.
Yeah, Willie, oversight and investigations is definitely going to be the focus. Democrats have complained for the past 2 years that the Trump administration has not responded to any of their requests. They have not handed over one document that Congress has asked for over the past 2 years. And Democrats have also complained that House Republicans have done little to nothing to force the Trump administration's hand. So that is set to change. Tonight, I spoke with Representative Jim Clyburn. He's a number 3 Democrat in the House, and he said what these election results show is that it preserves the Mueller investigation. It says that they will give some oversight to keep Trump from tampering with that investigation. You know, the new chair of the Intelligence Committee is going to be a Democrat, and that's the Russia investigation is what they oversee. You know, that fell apart over the past 2 years with Republicans in control of that. They vow to bring that back. Democrats also say they want Trump's tax returns. And there's also just a long list of everyday governing that Democrats want oversight of, such as the family separation of the border, putting troops on the border, adding the citizenship question to the census. They have 64 subpoenas that they want answered. And so they have 2 years of all of these things that they want answers on. The question now is if the administration will respond, Willie.
All right, yeah, Leanne, you mentioned a new Democrat at top of the Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, already on this network earlier saying he is ready to help protect Bob Mueller and his investigation. When we come back here, the head of the Democratic Governors Association, Jay Inslee, is standing by for us. We'll talk to him about big pickups across the country and a couple of disappointments as well. When we continue late night here on MSNBC. Welcome back to our live MSNBC coverage of election night. It's 2:46 in the morning here in New York City. Democrats recapturing control of the House tonight, but they also flipped several governor's mansions. Democrat J.B. Pritzker of Illinois unseated the incumbent Republican Bruce Rauner. Pritzker notably campaigned with Barack Obama just a few days ago. Democrat Laura Kelly held off Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach, beating him by about 5 percentage points. And in Michigan, State Attorney General Bill Schuette lost to Democrat Gretchen Whitmer by double digits there. And joining us now from Washington, D.C., the head of the Democratic Governors Association and the governor of the state of Washington, Jay Inslee. Governor, thanks for taking time with us at this late hour of the night, especially. You obviously had some pickups tonight. You got to be happy about Illinois, Kansas, Michigan, and New Mexico. A couple of disappointments mixed in the state of Florida, Ohio, and perhaps it still remains to be seen the state of Georgia. How are you feeling tonight?
Well, this is just a really good night for the Democrats. We flipped 7 seats. That's a lot, from red to blue. We now have 38 million more Americans who are going to have a Democrat governor working for them than we had this morning. We've got 6 women. This was a big night in restoring some decency and balance and progress to our state. But, you know, it's not so much just a win for the Democrats. It's a win for the people of Maine, who now under Janet Mills are going to get 40,000 people who have health insurance, we hope, and the people in Michigan getting roads that work under Gretchen Whitmer, and the people of New Mexico under Michelle Lujan and Grisham who can get solar energy jobs. So this is a win for a lot of folks across the country. And I think it was interesting, we did so well in the Midwest, too. I think that's a really heartening thing for the Democratic team to do Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and Kansas.
Yeah.
Big wins in the heartland.
Were you surprised by Kansas, Governor?
To some degree, but we had such a great candidate, Laura Kelly, and frankly, the Republicans have cratered that condition, the fiscal condition of that state. People were concerned about their schools. It was the same situation in Wisconsin, where Scott Walker has now been removed for office after he cut $800 million from kids' schools. So people, I think, in the Democratic Party stood up for bread and butter issues of schools and roads and clean energy and clean water. And that was very successful for us tonight. Yeah. We actually represent more than the Republicans. We represent the majority of the population of America tonight. We feel good about that.
Governor Elise Jordan has a question for you.
You bet.
Were you surprised that the turnout in Wisconsin was so high this year against Scott Walker?
Well, no. Governor Walker caused a lot of concern that he was damaging the educational future of Wisconsin kids by cutting $800 million. He rejected a way to have health insurance. He did not stand up for coverage for pre-existing conditions. There were a lot of things people were concerned about, including water issues. You know, it's interesting, across the Midwest, there's an increasing concern about clean water. Certainly, you know the story in Flint, Michigan. But it's not just Michigan. And we feel good about those Democrats now are going to stand up for clean water and jobs and kids. That's a pretty good value statement by the Democratic Party.
Alicia?
Governor, I know you said that you're not ruling out a 2020 bid after tonight's results. What do you think the top line lesson is for Democrats?
That we have a vision statement for the country that works all across the country. Pickups in Nevada and New Mexico, where we understand the power of solar energy and clean jobs. Solid wins in the Midwest, where we focus on heartland values of our kids' education and transportation and jobs. Wins in New England, where Janet Mills will help with health care and protecting women's rights. I think we've shown a vision statement that has a value where our families live, and that's why these governors won. That's why we won 7 seats. This is a big night for Democrats and a big night for America to restore that vision statement for the country.
You know, Governor, the last few times you've come on Morning Joe, you've been able to say, I'm not going to talk about 2020 until we get through 2018. Well, we're about through the midterms here tonight, and a lot of people look at you and look at the economic success of your state. They look at your progressive bona fides, and they say, boy, that guy would make a good candidate to run for president. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, those are obviously brilliant folks, but tonight we're still counting votes, so I'm focused on that.
So wait till tomorrow then?
Well, we'll talk another day.
Okay, the only thing you have going against you is your association with Joe Scarborough from your time together in Congress, but we won't hold that against you. Governor,
well, he has surmounted that.
Yes. Governor, thanks so much for your time tonight, and congratulations on a big night. I want to go to Noah Rothman of Commentary Magazine. Noah's standing by for us. Noah, big picture from you tonight, from where you sit. What did it look like?
Yeah, I have to disagree a little bit with my friend Eddie, who had a little bit of a dour take on what we saw yesterday or today. I think what we've seen is probably the best of both worlds. Everybody gets a narrative out of here that is a glass half full approach, and that's great from a national comedy perspective. Democrats, if they had failed to take the House, I think they would have withdrawn. I think they would have engaged in a lot of fatalism and possibly resigned themselves to doing extra political activities, more civil disobedience and withdrawing from the political spectrum. Similarly, if Republicans had enjoyed an outright victory tonight, you would have seen a ratification of their strategy to engage in racial demagoguery and to invent crises on the border. I think everybody now can claim victory and can be attacked as having a hollow approach to their own narratives. And from a national perspective, from a perspective of everybody engaging in politics, I think that's actually pretty good. It's providential almost.
Well, you know, no, I agree with that to a certain extent. But I guess I'm just kind of disturbed, and I'm sure you are too, by the success of the ugly appeals. That we talk about polarization, we talk about hyperpartisanship, but at the heart of it, at least for me, what I saw in this midterm was some very ugly rhetoric on the part of Donald Trump. It was Lester Maddox, it was George Wallace, it was Jesse Helms v. Harvey Gantt in 1990. It was worse than that, it seems to me. And the fact that it was successful suggests that even as we come out of this midterm with mixed government, that the intensity of our exchange will increase. And I don't know what do you think about that? Do you think we will be the conflict will even be more, shall we say, sharp as we move forward?
I imagine it will be, but the conflict I would think would be outside the political arena if it had gone a different way. Yeah. As long as we are engaging in politics as we understand it, which is the boring stuff, legislation, cloture votes, the stuff that goes on in Washington, then I think we're in a better place. And, in 2006, Republicans lost 31 seats, and it was a cataclysmic defeat. Democrats are on par to do a lot better than that. And so Donald Trump can declare victory, but it will be a hollow declaration. We all know how this turned out, and it was a mixed bag, and Democrats did quite well.
Anand, you've been looking a lot at voter suppression over the course of this campaign. Some of the focus for that issue has been in the state of Georgia in that governor's race, where one of the candidates, the Republican Kemp, is the attorney general in the state. What did you see tonight? Any indications of it from where you were looking?
A couple numbers that I'm going to play Kornacki for a second. In terms of House candidates, Democratic House candidates got 48 million votes, and Republican ones got 45. So the pickups there kind of reflect that. But look at the Senate. 42 million Americans voted for Democratic senators, and only 32 million voted for Republican senators. And on that night, Republicans gained 3. So voter suppression is a matter of the kind of shenanigans that have been happening at the polls in Georgia, the stuff that happened in North Dakota with ID requirements and those kinds of things. But it is also, voter suppression is in the DNA of this country. It is in the fact that the Senate, we still have this archaic system of each state having these 2 senators. And as this country gets more and more diverse, what is happening and what happened tonight is that the old America that wants to resist the coming of a new America is increasingly clinging to the Senate as an anti-democratic bastion against progress. If you just look at the raw numbers tonight was a resounding defeat for racism and intolerance. But the Senate and gerrymandering and these various other forms of suppression allow it. So I would hope this new House investigates not just Donald Trump, but political reform.
Briefly, Anand, I have to interrupt you, unfortunately, because that's a kind of a misnomer. Democrats were defending 26 Senate seats. Most of them were not competitive. And in California, there were 2 Democrats against each other. Every vote in California was for a Democrat. So just comparing raw numbers there is very misleading. It's not as though this was just a neutral contest here. Democrats were just engaged in more contests, and some of those were not competitive, and so they got more votes. That's not, you can't gerrymander a state.
No, as you know well, a minority of Americans, through the mechanism in the Senate, have a majority power in this country, and that is inconsistent with, frankly, the kind of reform that we need in this country.
Guys, hold that thought for 1 second. I've got to fit in a break. It's funny, as Anand finished his thought, I said, I have a feeling Noah Rothman's going to want to debate you on that after a break. He got it in before the break. We'll continue when we come right back. Our live election night coverage as we come up on 3 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast, right here on MSNBC.